The Penn State Department of Meteorology and Atmospheric Science houses faculty and researchers from all over the country, and it also houses the Pennsylvania State Climate Office. Today we are joined by state climatologist Kyle Imhoff. Kyle, you and I graduated together back in 2011 from undergraduate. You've been working with the Climate Office since then and have been the Pennsylvania State Climatologist now since 2016. Talk about your background. Did you ever think you would be the state climatologist?
No, that's for sure. So I grew up in central Pennsylvania, near the Maryland border, so in Somerset County. And when I was at a young age, we had a major tornado outbreak in Somerset County that really got me interested in the weather. And since then, once I went to Penn State and was a student, I was interested in weather forecasting. But then I learned that I liked other things like statistical analysis, forensic meteorology, and so the Climate Office was a natural fit. And so through the course of my years at Penn State, then I learned that the Climate Office would actually be a good place to go.
And a name that many folks on the show will find familiar was actually your predecessor. So Paul Knight was actually previously the Pennsylvania State Climatologist. Talk about working with Paul and following his footsteps.
Yeah, Paul was very much a mentor to me during my undergraduate years, and then when I went to graduate school in 2012. So my senior year as undergraduate in 2011, I went into Paul's office and I said, Paul, I'm looking for jobs. I'm interested in forecasting. Is there anything that you know of around the state or even outside the state that I could do? And about a month or two later, he sent me an email and said, would you like to work for me in the Climate Office? And I said, okay, sure. And so I was an assistant for him for several years, and again through my graduate school years. And then I eventually took over for Paul as state climatologist when he retired in 2015.
So as state climatologist, kind of take us through your day-to-day. What does the Climate Office do?
So the Climate Office, we really have two purposes. We support research within the department and the College of Earth and Mineral Sciences, and we also provide service and outreach to the Commonwealth. So my day-to-day activities, I manage databases, I work on retrieving additional data sets for weather data across the state. I also answer numerous data requests every single day and inquiries about weather and climate questions that people want to know about, or if they need something for legal cases or whatever it may be. So that's a lot of the time I spend in the Climate Office doing that sort of work.
So a lot of data combing. I want to talk a little bit about some of those data sources. One that I know we use even for the show, you help oversee, which is CocoRaHS. Talk a little bit about CocoRaHS and some of those other sources.
So CocoRaHS stands for the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. It's an all-volunteer network of citizens that install rain gauges in their backyard. And so every morning they go out and they observe what precipitation fell over the prior 24 hours. So that can be whether it's rain or it can be freezing or frozen precipitation, and you melt that down to see what the liquid equivalent is. And so it's just a way for us to get a better feel of what the precipitation patterns look like across the state.
Absolutely. And you're specifically in the Climate Office. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between weather and climate, because I think a lot of people get those confused.
Sure. So weather is the day-to-day variations and atmospheric properties that we think of as the weather. So temperatures, precipitation, wind patterns. When we talk about climate, we're basically analyzing that weather information over long periods of time, and that's where the use of statistics comes into play. We do trend analyses, we compute averages and standard deviations, variations, all those sort of things that we care about to determine how things have changed over the course of years, decades, and even centuries.
And as we get ready to, and we are heading currently through the spring season, what kind of trends do you notice about springtime in Pennsylvania, both in terms of temperature and precipitation?
So if you look at the historical record going back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, you'll see that for temperatures, we've actually increased statewide about a degree Fahrenheit per 100 years. So over the past century, we've warmed about that much. With precipitation patterns, it's actually been closer to a half inch per century. So we've seen an increase both in temperatures and precipitation. One important caveat to that is when we think of the springtime, we're talking about meteorological spring. So that would be March, April, and May. And so those are the trends that we've seen statewide. And it's very similar to what you see regionally. So if you look at the Northeast or nationally, we mimic the trends that you see there as well.
And today we've talked a lot about data, and there's something exciting on the horizon, actually, that you're working with some others here, partners, during the year of 2019. Can you give us a little bit of a tease on what that may mean for the Climate Office?
Sure. So we actually have a project. It's called the Keystone Mesonet. There will be a lot more details as we go through the next few months and a couple of years here. But basically, we're going to expand our weather data network, and we'll even have some sites that Penn State will maintain. So that's really exciting to have some really good weather data that will help not only weather forecast models, so that data will be sent to the forecast models, but they'll also be able to, these sites will help us observe what's currently happening at a smaller scale than what we have now statewide.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming in today, Kyle. We're looking forward to having you on more frequently
Absolutely.
on the show, too. And that is all the time we have for the interview tonight with Kyle, but we've got your short-range forecast coming up right after this.